the languages of earth and heaven, but am not open to giving or receiving love, I am just making noise. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but am not open to giving and receiving love, I have nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but am not open to giving and receiving love, I gain nothing. Being open to giving and receiving love helps us to be patient and kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Let the church hear what the Spirit says to us today.
Thanks be to God.
Because of that amazing love that Michelle and Marcel shared with us, we're promised a place. I used to think I knew what heaven looked like. Sunday school pictures made it look a little boring. I decided it was not gold streets and pearls on doorknobs, but more like a horse barn with some of the most amazing collection of Appaloosas and the opportunity to ride all day long. That sounded like heaven to me. As an adult, I have no idea what eternity looks like. But I remember at a service of a real good friend, the speaker said, I don't know what it looks like either, but we will not be disappointed. And so I trust that whatever and wherever those folks are whose names we share and whose images we bear in our hearts, they weren't disappointed, but they are at home. I thought earlier this week that I would title the homily today, What's Love Got to Do with It? I used to love watching Tina Turner sing that song. But as I thought about that, I realized that what she was saying wasn't anything I wanted to say today. It was maybe just more I watch anybody with that kind of energy. For those of you that are not 80 years old, maybe Tina Turner doesn't mean anything to you, but I promise you she had more energy than anybody I know today. And to be true, on a Sunday that we celebrate those who have gone on, and we look at our preacher for this year, I think love has everything to do with every bit of it. It's love that keeps their memory alive in our hearts. It's love that will commit your energy and mine to what we can do from here. Years ago, when the HIV/AIDS pandemic began to move across our country, some of my friends who were pastoring in larger cities were conducting as many as 50 funerals and memorials a week. I did a lot, but I never quite made that many. But there was one year in Detroit that I participated in 30 services in about 40 days. It was over a period of 2 months anyway. Lucky enough, somebody had told me when I first started pastoring, one of the first things you want to do, particularly in the early part of your pastoring, is you want to find a good therapist or go to AA meetings. Not an alcoholic, but an Al-Anon. We learned that we're not responsible for anybody's happiness or health or wealth except our own. And sometimes people go into pastoring because we imagine that we're going to fix everybody who's broken. Not going to happen. But anyway, in the middle of doing all of these funerals and memorials for young men that I knew, I was just so depressed. A part of that was I have never been a part of any funeral, any memorial, but what I don't remember as far back as I can. Now, as a child, I was 8 years old before I lost anybody close to me. And up to that point, I was the richest child in North America, maybe the world. I had both sets of grandparents, and I had both sets of my mom's grandparents. And so there were 8 women that I called grandma. There were 8 men that I called grandpa, and there wasn't any place I could go in Warwick County but what somebody knew one of those grandparents, if not my mother. Everywhere I went, I was recognized, I was spoken to, I was cared for. Southern Indiana's, at the time, and part of it still, is a very agricultural area, so you can't be around farmers without knowing that death is a part of life. It doesn't go life and then death, but it's life and death and life again. If you've ever done that little seed in a glass jar and watched the seed crack open, you think that the seed all dried up is dead, but it's not. You plant it in a jar, you watch it as it's cracked, it grows again. So it goes life, death, and life again. Recalling the people that I have lost when it's brand new, when it's still fresh, means that I can't get to that place of telling stories where we all might laugh. It was a long time before I could talk about my dad without crying. I still sometimes can get all weepy because he was just the coolest guy. Most of the names that Lorna read today are people that I'm aware of. People that I know something about. And then there's Dean. He was, for me, a colleague and a pastor that I haven't had in a number of years. There will be a time when I can share with you the stories that we laughed, and those times that he'd get aggravated and I'd get aggravated and then we both laughed. I can't do that yet. What I know about grief is that it changes. Not quick enough sometimes, but it changes. Living with the love that people leave behind for us is what changes grief into something less painful and more positive. Seems to me I've heard therapists and preachers talk about, well, all you have to do is learn to let the love go. Well, I think that's wrong. If you think for a minute that I will let go of one single minute, that my dad fussed at me, argued with me, told me outrageous stories, that just won't ever happen. I won't let that go. But learning to live with the love that he left, that's different. That's different. And so sometimes, I imagine when I'm teasing somebody, particularly around here, I imagine that I'm channeling my dad. If he liked you, he would pick on you almost with no mercy. If he didn't like you, he didn't mess with you. Sometimes when Terry is being particularly brilliant at home, I so wish he was around because he could bring her to tears and then have her falling out laughing all at the same time. Living with the love that people leave behind, that's a decidedly Christian sort of value, I believe. Because if you think about it, that is the calling, the invitation, and the only real hope of the Christian church. To learn to live with the kind of love that Jesus taught. It doesn't mean wearing sandals. It doesn't mean never having insurance. It doesn't mean all of those silly things that sometimes the church at large has tried to convince us of. What it does mean is that every foreigner, every stranger has to be welcome at this table and in this building. If we are going to call ourselves Christian, then we have to understand that a portion of what we have, a portion of every resource that we have, belongs to the poor. That's not just about money. That is about attention. It is not a Christian thing to walk past or drive past somebody who's holding up a sign that says, "Homeless, I need help." It doesn't matter what you think they're going to do with whatever you give them. That's not the point. Following Jesus, living with the love that Jesus taught us about, is about everyday practical things, and there's not a single doctrine included. If it was about doctrine, we would all be speaking Hebrew. We forget, don't we? Jesus was a Jew. He wasn't a Roman Catholic. He was not a United Congregational Church, UCC. He wasn't Pentecostal. He wasn't an Assembly of God. He was not a born-again, evangelistic, thumping a pulpit kind of guy. He was inviting people on the hillside to share the bread and the fish. And I'm just sure that he didn't pay attention to those people on the hillside who said, "But there's no tartar sauce." Every church has those people. That's how you know you're a real church. There's at least one person in here who will find fault with every single thing that's done. That's proof. This is a church. You think I'm kidding? I'm telling you the truth. Treating the resources that we have with respect and care. That's following Jesus. There was a man in Fort Worth named Hal Cromwell. He had a rather long and successful career as a scientist. He worked for a large oil company in Texas. And when he retired, he said he was going to go do what he really always wanted to do. As he sat in his office right off of 820, the southern loop around Fort Worth, he was so excited to tell me what he wanted to do. This guy was brilliant, and so I'm thinking he's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, or he's going to do some big thing. Maybe he's going to teach, maybe he's going to write a book. He wanted to be a handyman at a retirement village. And so that was a job that he took. After a while, they had a mandatory retirement age, and so he had to retire. Then he came back, even more excited, because he thought he had found in the church the thing that he really wanted to do. He was going to go around and take care of us. He built this incredible deck at the back of my house. I wanted just a little patio poured at the back door. He said, "Lady, you don't want to do that. You'll just end up piling junk there and be embarrassed when your mom comes." So he moved it out over the slope, and so this deck went out over a slope. It looked like I had some sort of a resort going on back there. And he built it all around this huge pecan tree. Then he came into the kitchen and he said, "Betty, we need to do something with this counter here. It's just wasting space." And so he pulled it out, and he pulled out this built-in oven, and he put in all sorts of shelves that were not so deep that my arms wouldn't reach all the way to the back. And he redid this whole side of my kitchen. And then he went on to the next person. And that's what he was doing when he got to move into eternity. for every one of those projects that Hal did, and all of them involved wood and screws and a hammer and nails, for every one of those projects that he did, he was following Jesus. He was taking care of people that didn't know how to take care of themselves. I would have just had a cement slab poured at the back of the house. And he's right. I had stacked up junk for the next 4 years. And bought a $3 tarp from Walmart to cover it when my mom came. But instead, there was this deck. Hal touched people in very specific and concrete ways. And what I know about these people that we celebrate and remember is that each one of those people touched lives in very concrete ways. Some of you have slices of wood that I painted on. Dean's the one that cut those wood pieces. And so they're the part of him at your house. I imagine the same kind of thing could be said for each one of the people whose names are read. I never met Wanda, but I know a little bit about her. I never met Alan. I know a little bit about it. I do know who Marge was, especially when it came to rummage sales around here. There were concrete things that they did that makes remembering them just a little bit easier. And there are other people. There are other people that you maybe want to remember. My great-grandmother told me one time that our memory is what heals us. That in our memories are the keys to new life. As people who follow Jesus, those concrete things are what matter. It's not a joke that moving a shopping cart to the corral is a spiritual exercise. That's for real. It's not a joke that making bread one weekend a month for communion. That's a spiritual exercise, whether you feel spiritual or not, because you're feeding people. Every time you do something around this place, especially every time you do something for somebody out there, even if you're related to them, when you're helping people, you're being spiritual. And the real trick, if you want to know that you're spiritual or not, if you have laughed and cried within the same hour. You have to laugh or you're not spiritual. You have to at least get teary. That laughing and crying, that's what the Spirit moves us to do. Every now and then at our family gatherings, somebody will say, "Wow, wouldn't Grandma love this?" Now, our grandma was, the kind of cook that maybe, I hope your grandmas were too. She could take nothing and make a feast out of it, and it tasted great. But when kids around our tables are talking about that, they're not talking about the food, they're talking about the face-to-face kind of getting together. The face-to-face kind of talking and sharing. And just for the record, we have some nutcases in our family. There's a couple of people that sometimes I wish would get laryngitis just before Thanksgiving. Or maybe really bad flu and stay home sometimes. But that doesn't happen. They show up anyway. And at some point, they show up exactly the way that they are. My grandma loved them all, loved us all. After the congregation meeting today, we'll share a potluck meal. Please note that I said afterwards. We'll do the meeting first. It's important business. But what's really important is the conversations afterwards. That sharing of the meal. Honoring people. We sort of get that. And if we could, in terms of talking about our faith, get to the place where we honor God by following Jesus, then we're on to something. You're on to something. Whether you're happy or sad, cranky, whatever it is, all of who you are is an instrument of God. If you're on Facebook, you probably have seen the post. Sometimes it's a grumpy old woman, sometimes it's a smiling old woman, sometimes it's just two little kids, and it says, wherever you are, you're making memories. Work at making them good ones. So, that's our job. Today, tomorrow, wherever you work, wherever you play. Make some memories, and you get to choose if they're good ones or not so good ones. But God bless us to make the memories good. Thank you again, God, for the gifts given us by these names that we have shared. And thank you, God, for a moment to think about what we might do today and tomorrow. Thank you, God.